Is a $400 wine really 10 times better than a $40 one? Does the right glass really improve your wine? And is it worth it when the size makes you look ridiculous? And why do wine labels matter so much? And should the label's look be part of every wine review? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer those questions in part 2 of our chat with Charles Jennings and Paul Keers, co-authors of the hilarious book, I Bought It, So I'll Drink It. You don't need to have listened to part 1 from last week first, but if you missed it, go back and have a listen after you finish this one. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover why we feel guilty about window shopping when it comes to wine, but not for other products. The worst wine gadget or gimmick Paul and Charles have ever encountered. How a 1947 Sauterne created a bond between Paul and a wine merchant. Their greatest wine deal discovery. Elements that expensive wines deliver, but bargain wines cannot. Why Charles and Paul are suspicious of mixed cases of wine. How the quality and perception of boxed wines has changed. The strangest vessel Paul and Charles have drunk from, what it was like drinking wine at 10 Downing Street with the Prime Minister and at Lambeth Palace with the Archbishop, what Queen Victoria's favorite tipple was, why Charles loves drinking on his own, current wine trends we'll likely look back on as being ridiculous, which wines Charles and Paul would now pair with their favorite childhood foods, and who Paul and Charles would love to share a bottle of wine with. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week, I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 341. Canada Day is coming up soon, so I thought I'd share a segment with you that we did on CTV's The Social about trailblazing wineries across the country. These wineries have all contributed to both Canadian and to the worldwide wine scene with unique grapes, new winemaking techniques, strong environmental practices, and innovative visitor experiences. Not only are they pioneers in these areas, but they are also leaders in the quality of wines they produce. So we're going to start off on the West Coast in Oliver, British Columbia, with Gold Hill Winery. The founders are brothers Sant and Gurbachan Gill. They were born in Punjab, India, and immigrated to the Okanagan Valley in the 1980s. After years of working hard on a fruit farm, they saved enough to buy land on the famous Golden Mile in the heart of the Okanagan Valley in 1995. Aside from the owners, the management team is all women, as is winemaker Val Tate, who immigrated from Mexico. Gold Hill is not only famous for its Cabernet Franc, but the winery is also a champion to make this a signature grape or varietal for the South Okanagan. They age their wine for an average of 5 years before they release it, and that's extraordinary since it not only ties up cash flow, but it also results in highly complex layered wines for consumers. This wine exudes aromas of violet, sage, vanilla, blackberry. It's medium-bodied and juicy with a long finish. Pair it with a tender Salt Spring Island lamb with rosemary. And keep in mind that you can buy the wines from Gold Hill and all of the wineries that I'm mentioning today directly from the winery. They will ship no matter where you live in Canada. Interprovincial and federal borders are coming or have gone down, so do it. Just do it. There is a huge benefit to buying directly from the winery versus just picking it up in the local store, because you start to develop a relationship with the winery. If you like, you can get on their mailing list or join their wine club. But also this is a reliable source of income for the winery versus Listings can come and go at the liquor store chains on their whim. But with these small farms, they're essentially family farms, start to develop a steady stream of dependable income. All right, moving on to Niagara, Ontario, we have Henry of Pelham. 30 years ago, brothers Paul, Matt, and Dan Speck started planting vineyards on Niagara's Short Hills Bench as teenagers when Henry of Pelham was only one of 8 wineries in Ontario. Imagine that. There's like more than 500 wineries now. The property still has the original buildings of the Speck family's forefathers from 1842 and a state-of-the-art wine production facility. The winery is a founding member of both Sustainable Wine Growing Ontario to minimize its environmental footprint, as well as the Vintners Quality Alliance, VQA, to establish quality standards for both Ontario and Canadian wine. Henry of Pelham is known as a pioneer for the Baco Noir grape worldwide. It's an early ripening, winter-hardy varietal suited to Canada's cool climate. This full-bodied wine offers aromas of campfire, smoke, blackberry, plum, cedar, leather, and oak. It's as Canadian as a red plaid shirt. The wine is also deeply pigmented. Purple teeth are a badge of honor among those who love it, and don't worry, that comes off. You won't end up looking like an extra in the movie Deliverance. The other thing I'd like to emphasize with each of these wines and wineries is that you can visit them. They also depend on your tourism dollars. And, a staycation or a local vacation, depending on which winery is closest to you, is a wonderful way to really maximize your vacation, even for families with children. There are often activities to do, from ballooning to biking to spas to, there's great restaurants often attached to these wineries or in the area. And of course, the regions are beautiful. So another way that you can support these wineries is by visiting them. Next, we have the Grange of Prince Edward in Hillier, Prince Edward County, Ontario. Niagara is the best-known region in Ontario, but just 2 hours east of Toronto is Prince Edward County, where some of the most exciting wines are emerging, including this one from the Grange of Prince Edward County, which has more than 40 acres under vine. They've recently completed an extensive vineyard rejuvenation project, replanting thousands of vines by hand throughout the property. They also offer a comprehensive culinary program focused on local farm-to-table ingredients from local producers. The winery's estate rosé is bursting with fresh notes of watermelon, pink grapefruit, and strawberries. It would be perfect with the winery's homemade foods. This wine is clean, bright, and juicy, like a canoe gliding over a pristine lake at sunrise. Next, we'll visit Quebec with Domaine de Ridge in Saint-Armand. This winery has more than 235,000 plants on its property, making it a leader for biodiversity in Quebec. Originally, Denis Paradis, who founded the winery in 1996, planted them along with friends and family, just as they did the harvest together in the early years. Since each plant can attract a dozen or more different insects and butterflies, the vineyard is teeming with life. Thousands of insects and butterflies. It's so beautiful. Between the vineyard rows, they also plant clover, oak, daikon radish, placelia, small purple flowers, that bring nutrients to the soil naturally. The winery specializes in hybrid grapes, a graft between 2 grapes to create a new one, that can withstand the cooler temperatures of Quebec's eastern townships. This bright and bracing white wine is made with Vidal Blanc grapes. It offers energetic flavors of lime, guava, and white peach. Its racy acidity will cut through melting cheese and fries and poutine faster than a lumberjack can hauler timber. We're ending our journey in Nova Scotia with Gaspereau Vineyards in Wolfville. Gaspereau Vineyards' Gina Haverstock was named the 2024 Winemaker of the Year at the Wine Growers of Canada Awards. She not only is the first person outside of Ontario and BC to win this prestigious award, she's also the first woman. After finishing a Bachelor of Science degree, Gina had planned to become a doctor. But then, when she graduated, she took a summer job at Yost Vineyards, a sister property of Gaspereau Vineyards, and fell in love with wine. Now her patients are vines, and she takes care of all our palates. The Gasbro Vineyard's tidal bay embodies the crispness of the province's cool climate region, and it would pair perfectly with a feast of Atlantic lobster and warm butter. Tidal Bay is also an appellation or designation unique to Nova Scotia. To earn it, wines must be made from specific grape varieties grown in the province, low in alcohol at no more than 11%, and highly aromatic, like this one, with zesty notes of lime, apple, and ocean spray. And then the host said, "Thank you, Natalie. Where can we find you and these wines online?" Well, on Instagram, I'm reviewing these wines and more at Natalie McLean Wine. And online, my website is nataliemclean.com. All right, back to today's episode. 3 of you are going to win a copy of the guest's terrific book, I Bought It, So I'll Drink It. I just love that title. I also still have 2 copies left of the memoir Grape Expectations, a family's vineyard adventure in France filled with vivid descriptions of delicious wines, great food, and stunning views, and a unique insight into the world of the winemaker, written by a previous guest, Caro Feely, as well as 2 copies of the award-winning book Vines in a Cold Climate by Henry Jeffries. If you'd like to win a copy, please email me and let me know you'd like to win. It doesn't matter where you live. I'll choose 7 winners randomly from those who contact me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. You can even give the book as a gift. In other bookish news, if you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemclean.com. I'd be happy to send you beautifully designed, personally signed book plates for the copies you buy or give as gifts. I'll put a link in the show notes to all retailers worldwide at nataliemclean.com/341. The paperback usually arrives within a day or 2 of ordering. The ebook and audiobook are instantly available. Okay, on with the show. Now let's talk about wine shopping. I just love the whole thing about browsing in wine stores as a flâneur, or someone who sort of observes people, is there to look but not necessarily to buy. One of you described it as a shopping, especially in posh shops. It's a cross between spiritual quest and shoplifting, back to that trench coat, I guess. Is wine the only product, do you think, that we feel guilty about when we're just looking and we really don't want to buy it?
I don't feel guilty. I would put it on a par with going into a bookshop. You're perfectly entitled to go into a bookshop and look around the shelves. The difference is that in a lot of the wine merchants, as soon as you get in the door, someone says, "Can I help you?" And, well, no, actually, I'd just like to have a look. And then, all right. Well, no one would say that if you walked into a bookshop. Can I help you? You'd be left alone to have a look around and see what there is. And so I really like looking in wine shops, looking what's there, learning from it. I think, a lot of the wine education is just, so those grapes are in the Italian section, or you learn from seeing how it's divided up geographically, how these things are shelved and so on. I think it's a terrific experience. And if you get the objectionable store assistant who wants to help you, all it's doing is blocking off that sort of education, if you like.
Right. And Charles, your shopping experiences, are you kind of in tune with that? Or
I don't have any shopping experiences.
Shoplifting then? I don't know.
Paul likes shops. He likes to go into all sorts of shops and shop, which, okay, all right. I hate shopping. I'm just a traditional bloke. If I want something, I think, I'll try it. Okay, I know roughly what it is, and I know roughly where to look for it, and I'm going to go and look for it. If it's not there, I'm out.
Surgical strike.
And that's it. And
okay.
Wine is exactly the same thing. I fancy a bottle of that. That'll do. It's about a 90-second process.
Okay. Yeah, I can see the...
There's a fancy new wine shop's just opened up near us. I still haven't been into it. Paul has.
I have, yeah.
No, I suppose I'll have to one day, but why? As Paul says, some guy's going to jump out of me because they're going to assume I'm looking for something, but I don't really know what. And so he's going to,
pressure you into something. Or
Charles is a lot happier than I am with deliveries. Is often written about having these cases and cases delivered from supermarket online retailers and so on. And because he can do all that at a distance, so he doesn't have to interact with anyone. He can just order it online. And I hate deliveries. So when I have to have wine delivered, it's a nightmare situation. And so big difference there between us.
Oh, well, yes, Paul, I have to quote you now because you have a hilarious passage about wine deliveries. I'll read just a tiny bit, but you say that wine always tends to arrive at the worst possible moment during a bathroom break or when a disapproving spouse is in earshot. And so quoting, is that something for me, Mrs. K, your wife? Her dulcet tones precede her steps downstairs. I'm caught in the hallway, case in hands, like a dog with a string of sausages. What? That box. I think I would be pushing my luck if I were to retort, what box? No. Anyway.
Well, this is true. This is what always happened. The doorbell would go and I'd be in the bathroom. And what am I going to do? I'm going to open the window and say, hang on, just a minute. So by the time I get down the stairs, this huge box is being put in my arms, and there's my wife. Oh, it's another box of wine. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Yes, I'll just take it downstairs. And you can't get away with it. And usually, it's so awkward. I hate it. And I find myself sitting there all morning waiting for the doorbell to ring, and then it doesn't ring until it's the wrong moment, and it's just terrible.
My heart really goes out to you, Paul. My ex-husband, I used to do sneaky shopping. One of many reasons. We're no longer married, but I would try to get the dress inside in my closet, tags off, bags away. What, this old thing, Inevitably, he was there when the delivery came. Anyway.
Always
happens. What's the worst cover story you've ever concocted for explaining an unexpected case of wine at the door? Did you even try?
Oh, it must be one of those PRs that sent us, if only.
All those samples that you keep getting. Oh, that's great. What's the worst or oddest marketing gimmick you've ever seen to market wine? I don't know, gift with purchase, any marketing thing that you thought was kind of silly or beyond the pale?
Apart from occasionally you got back in the day, if it was a sort of sparkling wine, there would be a little nylon, you get a fun bug, attached to the bottle. But I mean, that's all I can remember. Paul, would they do anything fun? Give you a pair of shoes or something?
I used to revel every Christmas in doing what we called the Sediment Christmas Mart. And I would look for the most ridiculous wine-related products that were being sold anywhere and sort of write them up as a little Christmas gift guide.
Of what not to buy.
Exactly. Because they're so ridiculous. Who on earth buys this rubbish? It's the idea that if you drink wine, someone will buy you this. I got you this.
They will.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely dreadful.
There's a menagerie of shame. What were the most ridiculous things that you wrote about? Like one or two things that were just the most useless wine gadgets or gifts? One
of them was a wine glass that was like in half. So you had a curved half and then a flat edge. And it was, you said you wanted only half a glass.
Yeah.
And the ugliest one I ever came across was this sort of frame that went on the wall, and there was a hole in the side so you could put your used corks into this frame. And gradually this frame would fill up with your used wine corks. You think, who on God's earth wants a box full of wine corks on their wall?
Each cork is a precious memory of a fine wine enjoyed, isn't it?
Not in our case.
Well, no, I don't know if it was just a load of screw tops in my case, but...
Oh, yes, yeah.
I did find online once, but no, I never actually got my hands on it, an old-fashioned corkscrew, and the handle was in the shape of Bill Clinton.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow.
There you go. I could have sprung £18.99 or something for it, or dollars, but I didn't. There you go.
Could be worth a lot these days. What about your colleagues? Tell them, what was your colleague's idea about a tanker of wine?
Oh, that was a mate of mine. It just comes up with just terrible ideas about absolutely everything you can think of. He's a genius, absolute genius. Yeah, he said, look, let's put this on a proper business footing. So you get a truck and then you somehow make a huge wooden barrel, like a fût de chêne, enormous one. Really? Put it on the back of the truck, take it down to the south of France, fill it full of the cheapest red wine you can lay your hands on, drive back really fast, and then go to one of these markets, like the ones that Paul goes to in trendy parts of town, where there's cheesemongers and vegetable salads, and you park up, and there you are. And you fill people's containers up with this stuff, and you get a French guy dressed in a stripy shirt with a beret. or an English guy pretending to, and he said, it can't fail. This is the best idea ever, and we'll make a fortune.
Because you went somewhere in France, didn't you, of filling up like a jerry can with
well, that was
wine.
the whole, that was on the basis, that was what that was all about.
A jerry can, like for petrol, like for gasoline?
It was, it's beautiful. It was in Southeast Vaughan too. And we got some friends there, and they don't make wines, but they grow there. Anyway, there's the cooperative, the local cooperative, wonderful. So we went down, and it was Saturday morning, and there are these whopping great food dish in these big vats, and people were just bringing along these, they call them a QB, a little plastic flagon with a tap on the end. It's 5 litres. And it was like a petrol pump. He'd take out the metal handle, there's a big rubber hose, goes into this whopping great vat, and he'd fill up your QB with 5 litres of whatever type of Vaughan 2 you wanted. And I immediately bought a QB and had it filled 5 litres of something. That was really a wonderful moment. I mean, the problem with the QB is it's not like a bib, it's not like a wine box. Obviously, it doesn't collapse. So you're letting the wine out and it's aerating. And so you've actually got to rebottle it as soon as you get home, which I had slightly overlooked. So I had to drink it very, very fast. Even then it went off.
The problem.
The idea of this huge, beautiful oaken barrel with thousands of litres of wine just coming out of a petrol pump hose. That's just beautiful.
Well, yeah, you could modify that idea and have the reserve and the table de vin, like they do the different grades of gasoline. I think that could...
Well, I mean, they did. Yeah,
they did?
There were all sorts of different flavours to choose from. I think that was instrumental in this preposterous idea of...
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one of you bonded with a salesman over a 1947 Sauterne? I think that was in a wine shop, right?
Oh, that would be me. Charles wouldn't even know what a 1947 Sauterne was.
Excuse me, I do know what a Sauterne is, and I understand dates.
There was a lovely wine shop in Paris, and I'd gone in there to do my sort of browsing bit, and the assistant inevitably said, in French, could he help me? And I sort of stumbled through saying, maman. And he obviously recognised then that I was English and he was an Englishman, guy from up in Lancashire, young guy. And we started talking about wine. And he said, just look at this. And he sort of opened this drawer. And in there was this 1947 Sauterne. And both of us just stood there and looked at it. And just seeing this wine was such a privilege. We were both sort of looking at each other. And that was just a great moment, yeah.
We both understood how special it was.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
How long ago was this? I mean, how old was the wine when you were looking at it?
Well, it was in the 20s, so it's nearly 80 years old, 70, 80 years old. And, yeah.
No, 47 or 27.
47, yeah.
No. It would have been okay?
I would think so, for a good Sauterne. Certainly if it was a Decam, it would be, yeah.
But he didn't open it, but...
no, sadly not.
Sadly. So I trust it wasn't Ikem.
I don't think it was, or I would have put that in the piece.
Right. Okay. But Sauterne's still pretty special no matter which one. Sweet wine from Bordeaux. Okay. So a lot of your stories are about bargain hunting, which is delightful. What was your most triumphant wine deal discovery? And was it actually good to drink? Either of you?
It would have to be the petrol pump stuff in the Vaughan 2.
Right.
That was a real revelation, and because it's so unpretentious and fresh and real, that was just great. That's it. Nothing could beat that.
From Petrus to petrol pump. You guys do cover the whole gambit there, yeah. Do you think there's something that expensive wine delivers that bargain wines can't, apart from perhaps, I don't know, inherent quality? I mean, there's more expensive inputs, but is there anything there other than maybe, I don't know, how you're feeling about it?
I think there is a greater experience out of drinking better wine. There's no doubt about it. But I think that the return for your money sort of plateaus fairly quickly. So, if you go up for, I don't know the equivalent in Canadian dollars, but, if you go up from a £10 wine to a £30 wine, you will really notice the difference and have a tremendously greater experience.
So from $15 to $40 approximately. Yeah.
Right. But then if you multiply that by 10 and go from $40 to $400, I suspect that the difference in quality isn't that great. It's beginning to plateau out.
I'd agree.
So you've got to decide when you're going up that $400 level, yes, it's going to be an experience, but is it going to be 10 times as good as a $40 bottle?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would sort of go in the other direction, that if you've got something that's really pretty ropey, but you can find a way of making it acceptable, that's a fantastic win. Because actually, again, south of France, I remember we were in a restaurant and we said, oh, let's have a bottle of rosé. I can't remember, it's local rosé. And it turned up and it was room temperature and it was a beautiful, hot, warm evening. But okay, what do we do then? And then this big bag of ice cubes gets plonked on the table next to us. Of course. So you fill up your glass and then plonk in an ice cube and let it all mix and mingle. Of course, it worked perfectly. You weren't drinking quite so hard. The wine chilled. There was a beautiful mist would form on the glass. And it didn't matter. The wine was like €2 a litre or something like that. It was just nothing special. So that sort of enjoyment, that's beyond price.
Love that. The two ways, two directions. I don't know if both of you are deeply suspicious of mixed cases, so of different wines, say 12 different wines. But as you rightly note, we don't buy mixed cases of bread or many other products. Do you think there's an element of gambling or covering your bases or hoping to discover one thing among some duds? Or what is it about mixed cases and wines?
I think it's an almost con trick on the part of the wine retailers that they can get away with fobbing off the wines that they can't sell otherwise. There's no other real argument for it. So, it's a lucky dip, and you get, well, no, it's not, because they've chosen the wines that are going in there. And I think you'd be very unlikely to unwrap a bottle. Wow, a bottle of Latour. Well, no, it's not going to happen. It's like those Christmas hampers as well. When you look at even the posh Fortnum & Mason Christmas hamper, and there's always a couple of things in there that no one really wants. The tinned peaches or something, I don't know. And you think, yeah, they just put that in because they can't get rid of it otherwise. It's...
Absolutely. That sounds very, very likely. End of line stuff. Let's move to wine vessels. In your chapter on wine boxes, you described the somewhat conflicted feelings you have about them. Do you think the quality and perception of box wines has changed since you read the book? Have you changed your perception of them?
I have to say, I keep a wine box of white wine in the fridge now permanently in order to cook with it. Because if you open a bottle of white wine just to put 100 ml in a recipe, then you've got this open bottle of wine. Whereas if you've got a box, you can just use the tap, take off your 100 ml, put it in, and all's well and good. I think in terms of having a wine box out to drink from, I found that was a recipe for disaster, because it's like, oh, look, I'm just passing the wine box. Oh, why don't I just have a little glass now? And, I always feared the next thing would be sort of lying on the floor holding this box up over your open mouth. As you can...
We've all been there. I'm thinking of going back to it, actually. I haven't had a wine box in the house for ages, but I know people who will keep a rosé or a white in the fridge just for tippling. And as long as you can maintain an iron grip, then it seems a pretty good way to do it. So I might try that again.
Okay, well, evolution. Your descriptions of drinking from plastic goblets are hilarious. What's the strangest vessel you've ever drunk wine from in a pinch? And did it affect the taste or experience of the wine?
Your industrial mug, I would say.
Ah, what was that?
It wasn't really strange. I mean, it was a mug, normally tea or coffee. But I had some really horrible red. I think maybe this might have been a Côte du Rhône. My brother-in-law brought me a case back. It was really nice. It was revolting. Absolutely disgusting. I don't know why. And I was just trying to find different ways of getting through it, like setting fire to it or straining it through a sock or something like that. And I thought, I'll put it in a mug. It's a big old chunky mug, big old chunky coffee mug. And it kind of helped, because then the mug sort of you weren't in a glass. You couldn't see it really. You'd peer down into it. And it sort of empowered you. You're holding on to it. So you're not going to get away. There's only one boss here, and it's me, right? So you stay in the mug until you're drunk. It was that sort of feeling. It was I would recommend that if you've got something that's a bit hard to dispose of.
Have to try that this weekend. And Paul, what about your Riedel tasting glass?
Oh, the Riedel tasting glass. I have it here. I'll show it to you.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. So this was when, we were sort of starting off, and Riedel were relatively young still, and designing glasses for each particular wine variety. So I thought, right, okay, I really like Bordeaux. I can't afford the great Bordeaux. So I'll get a Riedel sommelier tasting glass, which will improve the taste of the cheaper Bordeaux. And this glass is now retails for like £90 for a glass.
150 something.
$150, something like that. And unfortunately, it's about the size of a baby's head. If you can see, this is a colossal thing. I mean, it's a really huge glass.
You could do a steam facial in that after you finish drinking.
So I'm in this position where if I've got people round, like for dinner, if I sit at the head of the table with this and everybody else has got normal wine glasses, I look a complete plonker. And I'd love to sit there and go, it's magnificent. And they're going to think, look, what a... So unfortunately, it doesn't get much use. It does enhance the taste of the Bordeaux. There's no doubt about it. But I'm so embarrassed sitting there drinking out of this thing the size of a melon that it really doesn't get much use.
Oh, that's too bad, Paul. Let's talk about your experience drinking wine at 10 Downing Street with the Prime Minister of the UK, and then at Lambeth Palace with the Archbishop of Canterbury. So maybe what surprised you about the wine selections at both?
What surprised me was how poor the wine was.
Really?
Comes back to my absurd ideas that, this is all about aspiration and social status and these sort of things. And yeah, you get a wonderful, here is an invitation to 10 Downing Street. You can see what you get. Look, there we are. So we've got crests and all this sort of thing. And then you go there and they're drinking Campo Viejo Rioja, which is like really rubbish wine, really everyday wine. It's not the sort of wine you expect to find in 10 Downing Street. In Lambeth Palace, Archbishop of Canterbury, you go there, what are they drinking? Basic New Zealand, Australian Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc, really basic wines. And the conclusion I came to in the end was that the occasion, the location, is so significant that they don't really need to make it up with the wine, because you're not there for the wine. You're there for the Prime Minister, for the Archbishop of Canterbury, for the social conversation. So they get away with this really quite low rent wine.
Do you think they were pouring the PM and the Archbishop different wines, or?
No, I don't think so. In fact, certainly with the PM at the time was David Cameron, and I didn't even see him with a glass in his hand. He just swanned around the room having a little bit of conversation here, a little bit of conversation there. The other thing that, talking about strange drinking vessels, in number 10, they serve the wines in these sort of shatterable glasses. They're really thick. It's like car windscreen glass. Presumably so that should anyone think, I'll break this glass and stab it in the face of the Prime Minister, you can't do it, because if you shatter the glass, it'll just crumble into bits. But it's really not good for drinking wine from. It's a good security arrangement, but not a good wine drinking arrangement.
Wow. Does anything stand out from those visits for you, Charles? Either place?
I wasn't there. I don't get invited to 10 Downings. I never go to these fancy pants do's.
I'm sensing a total divergence. It's a wonder that you two ever met or stayed together as writers.
Who says we stayed together?
Extraordinary. Okay. The chapter about trying Queen Victoria's tipple, red wine mixed with scotch. What did that taste like?
It was just horrible.
Ah, okay.
It was half and half. I didn't make too much. She was very, very partial to it, apparently. You think, well, Queen Victoria, this model of rectitude and uprightness and probity and all that. She took marijuana during childbirth to ease the discomfort. And her regular drink, when she had Gladstone around and Disraeli or everyone, any time, was this filthy mixture that she swore by. So I made some, it's half and half. I put it in a little glass. And I went writing or doing something, and I sort of put the glass down and then forgot it was there, really. And then looked at it, I thought, oh yeah, I must try that. And took a really big slug. And it was awful, and I thought I was going to die. And, I had chest pains, double vision, and all this sort of stuff. So that was the end of that. So a total waste of scotch and red,
it just ruined
red
both.
wine. But
oh.
Actually, and the other one that I wanted to try, but I just didn't have the courage, perhaps I will one day, was Evelyn Moore, the famous writer who Brideshead Revisited.
Oh, yes.
Great
I was
writer.
mixing up the two. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he really drank. And he had a midday reviver to sort of get him through the rest of the day. And that was a mixture of Guinness, this extra stout, equal measures, Guinness, gin, and ginger beer. and he would drink sort of roughly a pint of that just to get through lunchtime. But I'm still waiting to try that. But I've got to be strong.
Right. Wait a little longer. Yeah.
We were talking about Kingsley Amis earlier on, and at one point he used to have a drinks cabinet on the little landing in the turn of the stairs in his house. And so I said, why have you got a drinks cabinet there? Well, in case I get caught short without a drink when I'm going upstairs. I'd rather fancy following that myself.
That's great. And how about celebrity wines? Have you encountered any that you thought were ridiculous or any that actually tasted good?
They all seem to be just sort of marketing things.
I did it. That cricketer Ian Botham.
Ian Botham,
launched a
yes.
range of. They all do, didn't they?
Sports celebrities. Okay.
Absolutely, completely meaning it. Did Angelina Jolie or something?
Yeah, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, Miraval, but they split, and he's now the majority stakeholder. So that's, of course, produced by the Perrin family, Chateau Beaucastel. So
it is supposed to be quite nice, but it's out of our price range.
It is pricey. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And the PRs haven't sent us one. So.
Well, we'll send them one.
Doesn't Francis Ford Coppola, doesn't he make one?
Yes, he does.
He makes it, and it's supposedly a good, and again, out of our price range, I think.
Yeah, in the old Inglenook estate. So let's just touch briefly then. I love this, what you said. When discussing drinking alone, you note that people who announce with a great gust of piety that they never drink on their own are the worst sort of Puritan. Do you still believe that? And maybe say more about it?
I'm laying it on a bit heavy, really. I'm not quite sure what mood I was in when I wrote that, but I would go the other way. Actually, I may sound like an alcoholic, I suppose, but I love drinking on my own, not to excess, not drinking yourself under the table because you're fed up, but just, I like eating alone, frank, and you're just there and you can just enjoy it, whatever it is. I can remember being in places, bars or pubs or something like that, and there's a moment, I'm just having a glass of wine, it's a nice day, and you do that. There's just you and the glass of wine. It's just wonderful. You don't get drunk. You're just having a complete moment of self-indulgence. And you can only get that if it's just you. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Pleasures of solitary drinking. One of you again noted that Blue Nun was once considered sophisticated in the 1970s. What do you think we'll look back on today that's in vogue right now, say in 10 or 20 years, and say, oh, that was just ridiculous, or it's no longer whatever?
I would say, and it's a combination of the wine and the packaging. And it's what over here, I don't know if the term has come over there, is yacht rosé.
Oh, yacht rosé.
Have you come across this?
We've got Rock Yacht Station where they just play innocuous music by feathered-haired 80s guys.
Well, the idea of yacht rosé is two things, really. One is that it comes in as large a bottle as possible. So it looks like almost a fire extinguisher or something. Massive, massive bottles of this stuff because you've got an incredibly expensive yacht. You're an oligarch and you have girls who come out with these massive bottles. And the rosé itself should be as pale as possible. So it's got lighter and lighter and lighter until there's almost no rosé flavour in it whatsoever. And that's the hallmark of it being a really glamorous yacht rosé, is that it's practically no colour, no flavour, but comes in a colossal bottle. I think that's the one. In a few years' time, they're going to look back and say, what? What was that all about?
Well, it epitomizes the whole yacht scene. Charles, is there anything for you any trend or particular type of wine that you think in 10 years we'll think that was ridiculous? Why were we caught up with that?
I'm just agnostic on this. I take Paul's point. Certainly in the UK, rosé has become, rosé commands a price premium anyway. The most ordinary stuff is £1.50 more, than its neighbour, if its white or red neighbour. And, it's a sociable drink, and it's a kind of girls' night out kind of drink, and it's the packaging, and it's packaged and repackaged in fancy bottles, not just huge bottles, but it's bottles with all sorts of ribbing and lumps and strange shapes to make them look different. And that may be 10 years now. So what was the fuss about rosé? It was all right, but come on.
All right. Well, time's flying. So how about a lightning round? Just some quick answers or quick questions, short answers. Let's see. You can answer it or pass. But if your mother wrote a book about you, what would the title be?
Are you sure that's a good idea?
I like that.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
How about, you don't both have to answer them, but if you want to, go ahead. There's no buzzer, but just let me know. If your high school yearbook had superlatives, what would you have been voted most likely to become?
Our school motto was rather of use than fame. And I suspect both as a view of me and a criticism of that, they'd say most likely to be famous.
Huh. Okay. Oh, I see.
Most likely to be famous. Sorry.
Then useful.
Mine would have been most likely to remain exactly the same.
Oh, perfect. Your favorite childhood food and what you pair with it today as an adult.
There used to be a wonderful thing called Angel Delight that was a sort of really high processed dessert that you used to make from a powder oh God, it was delicious. They won't make it anymore. There's too many chemicals in it, but it was very, very sweet. The idea of having that and maybe that 1947 Sauterne, I think that would be an interesting combination.
Yeah, shabby chic kind of. Yeah.
Right, I would say beans on toast, and also pair it with the same Sauterne.
The Sauterne,
it would
yes.
work.
Oh, that's great. If you could share a bottle of wine with anyone outside the wine industry, living or dead, who would it be and what would the bottle be?
I think boringly for me, you mentioned at the outset that I chair the T.S. Eliot Society. It would be with T.S. Eliot, who was an enormous clubman. He was actually a great gin drinker rather than wine drinker. He drank in enormous quantities. But the idea of drinking a really nice Bordeaux in one of his gentlemen's clubs on Pall Mall and talking with him about his work, that would do it for me.
Lovely. Anyone come to mind, Charles?
I would have a bottle of champagne with Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, good guitarist.
Or Ella Fitzgerald.
Ah, right.
But champagne.
Champagne.
I don't know, champagne, as long as it looks like champagne.
Sounds lovely. If you could put up a billboard in downtown London, what would it say?
Do you remember when you could park here for free?
Just to aggravate everyone.
That's great.
Anything come to mind, Paul?
Probably the thought I've kept in mind for many years. The light at the end of the tunnel is probably a train coming the other way.
I love it. It's a perfect way to wrap up. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
I'd mention wine labels because I think that they are ignored by most wine writers. And I think they're terribly important for two reasons. Firstly, because they're about the only marketing that most bottles of wine have, because we go into shops and that's all we can see is the labels. So they're terribly important from that point of view. And personally, I think if you're setting a table for dinner, you've invested in the table, in the crockery, in the cutlery, your glasses. You set up this beautiful thing. Why would you put a bottle of wine on the table, however it tastes, if it looks terrible? And I have decanted lots of wine simply because the label is horrible. And I think that wine critics should always say what the label looks like and whether it would look good on the table.
What for you makes a good label?
As a traditionalist, I like those elderly French labels with sort of dry point pictures of the chateau.
Castle in the middle distance.
Yeah,
on
the chateau.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gives it that sort of authenticity.
No fluffy squirrels or purple iguanas.
Absolutely not.
No.
Exactly.
Okay. I can see your dinner set. Charles, anything you want to mention that we haven't covered?
Just thinking about this all over again, having thought about it really for a few years. Paul and I are so old. I mean, we're both nearly 70. We're going to be 70 next year.
Wow, you're well preserved, or maybe completely pickled.
Actually,
Pickled,
69 next year. But
That's remarkable. You don't.
I'm so sorry, Paul. Yes, of course you are going to be 69 years. No, are you?
No, we're not.
No,
No,
you're
you're
gonna
right.
be
I think you're right. Next year would be 70.
Yeah, come
this
on.
year. Yeah.
Come on,
He's right.
Keep up. Yeah, so we're both going to be 70 in December. It's a bit of a way off. But with that generation where wine became democratized in this country, obviously France forever, but for the first time, it wasn't something stuffy or arcane or least of all terribly expensive. And I can remember the first big wine warehouses coming in and you got a real choice, and it was just wonderful. And I still feel a bit of that novelty value about it. I still haven't really got used to it. Younger generations and so on, it's every day as bread and butter. but I still feel very slightly excited about it. It's just ridiculous, but I do. So
There's still some magic about it.
yeah, it's still it's nuts.
I find the downside of being our age, once upon a time I used to invest in buying wines en primeur from France and sticking them downstairs for 10 years. And now the en primeur offers come out and I look at it and it says, it'll be at its best in 2037. And I think, well, I won't be. And I've stopped.
I guess you have to take that into consideration, not just drink by dates, but live by dates. Wonderful, wonderful. Where can we find you and your books and your blog? Just remind us where we can find all that online.
Sedimentblog.com. That's the place to go. And, you mentioned the archive. It's all there. The blogs, the books, more about us. It's all at sedimentblog.com.
Well, I urge everyone to go back to them because they are evergreen. They are timeless because of your wit and style, both of you. So thank you so much for spending your time with us and your great stories and humor and intelligence. Really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful conversation. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Charles and Paul. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, is a $400 wine really 10 times better than a $40 one? Short answer, no. But Charles and Paul believe there is a greater experience to be gained from drinking a better wine, but that the return from your money plateaus quickly. So if you go up from say a $10 to a $30 wine, you'll really notice the difference and have a tremendously better experience. But then if you multiply that by 10 and go from $40 to $400, the difference in quality isn't that great. You've got to decide if you're going to go up to that $400 level and how your trust fund is doing. Yes, it's going to be an experience, but is it 10 times as good as that $40 bottle? I would say no. Number 2, does the right glass really improve your wine, and is it worth it when the size makes you look ridiculous? So Paul thought to himself, okay, I really like Bordeaux, but I can't afford great Bordeaux, so I'll buy a Riedel Sommelier tasting glass, which will improve the taste of cheaper Bordeaux. Now, this glass retails for £90, which is about $150 per glass. And unfortunately, as he said, it's about the size of a baby's head. Colossal. If I've got people around for dinner and I sit at the end of the table and everyone else has a normal wine glass, I look like a complete plonker, he notes. I'd love to sit there and say, oh, this is magnificent. And they're going to think, what an idiot. So unfortunately, this glass doesn't get much use. It does enhance the taste of Bordeaux, there's no doubt about it, but I'm so embarrassed sitting there drinking out of this thing that's the size of a melon. It doesn't get much use. And number 3, why do wine labels matter? And should the label's aesthetic be part of every wine review? Charles and Paul mentioned wine labels because they think they are ignored by most wine writers, guilty, and they're terribly important for 2 reasons. Firstly, because they're about the only marketing that most bottles of wine have. We go into the shops, that's all we can see, the labels. Second, if you're setting your table for dinner, you've invested in the table, the dishware, the cutlery, the glasses, the napkins, to set up a beautiful tablescape. Why would you put a bottle of wine on the table, however it tastes, that looks terrible? Wine critics should always say what the label looks like, they say, and whether it looks good on the table. I have to agree, although I am not going to start adding label reviews to every review, but it's something that I need to think about. In the show notes, you'll find the full transcript of my conversation with Charles and Paul, links to their websites and books, the video versions of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube Live, and where you can order my book online no matter where you live. If you missed episode 244, go back and take a listen. I chat about whether you should buy wines based on competition medals with Dr. Winnie Bowman, Cape Wine Master. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
That's what's interesting for me about competitions, is that I taste different flavors. It expands my own tasting memory for when I taste South African varieties. It also reminds me of the quality of our wines and whether we are actually on a par with the world.
You don't wear the same perfume every day, or you accommodate to it, sort of cellar palette. You're trying different flavors, scents, aromas. You won't want to miss next week when we chat with the power couple of Canadian winemaking, Peter Gamble and Anne Sperling, who are partners in life and in work. They have so many stories to share from their 40 career making wine at some of the country's best wineries, including Sperling Vineyards, Malivoire, Southbrook, Stratus, Ravine, Benjamin Bridge, Lightfoot and Wolfville, Versado, that's in Argentina, by the way, but the rest are Canadian, on 7, Lely, Stonebridge Vineyards, and Dobbin Estate. They'll join us from their home in Niagara. If you liked this episode or learned even one thing from it, please email or tell a friend about the podcast this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in learning more about how to buy wine. It's easy to find the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Just tell them to search for Natalie McLean Wine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to my show on my website at nataliemclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or if you'd like to win one of 7 copies of books that we have to give away. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or if you've read my book or are listening to it. Email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to take the free online food and wine pairing class with me called the 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever at nataliemclean.com/class. And that's all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/341. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week, perhaps a wine you bought based solely on a beautiful label. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.